Good afternoon. Today we're going to be going over HeritageQuest. This is a site that is free. You can access it from home as long as you have access to Galileo. Every state is a bit different, but as long as you live in Georgia, you should have access to Galileo through your library card. So this is a wonderful free resource that you can use at home while you're unable to go out. So we're going to show you how to get to that real quick. So first of all, if you just start with Google, if you're not sure how to get to it, you just type in Galileo and see, it might be a few down, but it's galileo.usg.edu. And this is actually the new version of Galileo. They recently updated their website, excuse me. And just a quick preview of this. If you are at a library, you'll automatically be logged in. So if you'll notice over here, it says Statesboro Regional Library System. Since I'm using the server at the library, I'm automatically logged in. But you can log in with your library card and a password, which you can call your library to get that password. And so you can search for different things. They also have databases by subject and databases by type. And then towards the bottom, they have the most frequent used websites, which if you notice over here, they have the Ancestry Library. Since we have been going through so many libraries being closed due to COVID, the Ancestry Library Edition, which is typically only allowed to be used while you're in a library, they have made it accessible through while you're at home. So if you access Galileo, you can also access Ancestry Library. But for today, we're going over HeritageQuest. So if you do databases by subject, we're going to go here to view all subjects, and we're going to pick genealogy, which will be on the next one. And then right here, it's going to give us several different websites. So of course, there's Ancestry Library Edition, Archive Grid, which is very good as well. And you can go through the rest of these later. We're going to go to page 2. And then at the very top is HeritageQuest Online. So this is HeritageQuest. I'm going to close these other tabs real quick. So just a quick run through. You might notice it's laid out a little bit like Ancestry Library if you're used to it. Even has some of the similar pictures. One of the biggest differences of this versus Ancestry Library, their search is very different. They have things broken down into categories. So if you are going to search for someone in your tree or an ancestor, you pick the type of record you're looking for, instead of just doing a broad search on that ancestor to find anything. So for this purpose, you have to already have some sort of information. For example, if you're looking for a census record, say 1920, it will give you all the fields that are in the 1920 census. So again, everything is already here. These are all the questions that were on the 1920 census. Of course, you can still, choose the date, the county, township, and so forth like that, but that is only going to open the original census for that location. You would still have to browse every page yourself to look for the individual. So again, you have to know the basic information before you do these searches. And I mean, there are types of records that have indexes, so as long as you know maybe a location, but when it comes to HeritageQuest, you need to know a name, a date, and a location. Very important. When it comes to using Ancestry, MyHeritage, Family Search, those are much more broad, where you can put in names and maybe relatives without as much information, and they can search their entire database, whereas this one is much more specific. So I'm going to go through some of the basics up at the top. We're going to do the search at the last. So to begin with, they have research aids. So HeritageQuest is wonderful if you're just getting started, which of course here they have top 10 search tips, creating timelines that produce answers, and census forms. So you can get copies of original census records or the census questions, which is very useful. And then for the census, it gives you an overview of it, historical census, published statewide censuses and indexes. There were several states that did their own census in between the population ones for the nation. County-wide census indexes, and then the non-population census schedules. These would be an example of agriculture, mortality schedules, and so forth. And then they have beyond the basics, so a cemetery research primer, black sheep, 10 things to know, and everybody has that in their family. And then African American family research. So these are going to be handouts, tips, and different things to find to help you. So here's an example of the black sheep in the family. I know some people who they don't care to know anything, and others, they want to find the horse thief. They want to find, you know, the bandit and so forth. So you can look at all types of things like this in your tree. And then we're going to go to maps. HeritageQuest has a wonderful, wonderful research map for every state. For right now, I'm going to pick Georgia, since that's where we are. And what this is it shows the progression of Georgia when it was first created, and then when the parishes, the counties were created, and when that changed, which is very important. Because remember, I say you need to know the history of the location. You need to know the counties and so forth, because even if your ancestor lived there, that doesn't mean that they lived in that location the entire time. It could have been a different county when they lived there. So in this little portion, you'll notice 1790, Georgia used to stretch all the way to encompass Mississippi. That is quite a large area. And of course you have Spanish jurisdiction here, part of Louisiana, things like that. And nearly all of this was Indian lands at the time. And you'll see these counties and parishes, how large they were to begin with. So Washington County here, you see just how large it is. Effingham County, all of these coastal counties, these were some of the original parishes that became counties later. And so if we jump to 1800, you'll notice several of these were divided up. I'm just going to jump to 1830. Look at that. In the 1820s are when the Indian Removal Act began, so the Indians lost most of their territory. So I'll go ahead and do that 1820 real quick. So you see this was the Indian lands, and these three counties were created. So in the 1820s, this is when so many people began getting land grants, and you have the Cherokee Land Lottery, which does not involve the Cherokee Indians at all, just so you know, where so many families from these coastal counties began moving south. These lands mostly belonged to the Creek Indians at the time. So in the 1820s, you would have all of these people moving southwest. And let's see, here's Bulloch County right here where we are, but you can tell that the white lines are counties that are still to come. So for example, you have, trying to see, here's Evans County right here, and it is basically encompassing a good portion, mostly in Tattnall County. But some of these county borders, they will go back and forth. Some counties were created and then later they're absolved completely. Some gain land and then they lose land and so forth. So if I jump to 1850, you can see once again how things are kind of chopped up. So down here especially, if you remember, these were 3 big counties right down here. And so they've gotten chopped. I'm going to jump to 1870. And one of the reasons I'm showing Georgia is because Georgia has the second most counties, only second to Texas. So 159 counties just for Georgia. There's 1910, and so you see there's still a few counties right in here that haven't been created yet. And the reason it stops at 1920 is that's most of those counties when they have been created. Some of them have kind of changed their borders a little bit since then. But this applies to every single state. You can pick Utah, for example, and it will show you the territory when it was first created. And you go further, you can see how their county systems and territories were established. And it'll usually tell you at the bottom when things were done. Same with Texas. And you can blow this up to read this. You can print it. And if you notice with Texas, it has the west and the east just because it is so large. So this will help a great deal when you're doing your research and you come across a location you're not familiar with. You can just go to the maps here. So now we're going to go to the search. And remember how I said if you're going to search on HeritageQuest, you have to kind of know what it is you're searching for, because otherwise you can get a little confused. So we're going to start with the census records. And this part will probably look very familiar. It's almost like Ancestry. So you can do kind of a general search here, but you kind of want it to be more specific. So you can view all collections included in this search. And over here you can see that it has helpful links as well. It will tell you the ones that are free, census records that have been recently updated, indexes, and things like that. So I'm actually going to jump to the 1940 census. And so I could put in the information, but I'm going to look for my grandmother, who I know was kind of recorded, their names were recorded backwards. So this actually has where I pulled it up earlier. They were in Georgia in Mitchell County, and the community was called Hensington, and the military district was 101-21. So once I click here, it opens up to the original. So from here, it's only 23 pages, so I could go through every page to look for it. And if you're familiar with most census records, they typically list the last name and then the first name. So for an example, you have Thomas Tyson right here. I believe that's Will Johnson. And you can kind of tell that those are last names, James Anderson, William Jones, and things like that. But I'm going to jump to page 9 or slide 19. And then right up here, if you notice, they have this name, the person who transcribed it, just like they transcribed all of the others, but it says L. Glenn John. And so this would be my great-grandfather who gave this information, because if you notice the little X, and remember we talked about that, that means he's the one who gave the information. But for some reason, he gave his name the way it was. So his name is actually John L. Glenn. But when you look down here, which is my grandmother, it says Joyce John. John is not the last name. It is her father's first name. But when you come down here, you notice it says Joe Bowers, which this is her stepbrother, and yet they put Bowers as the last name, and they put that first. So that's an example of how to get to a census record, and you can also kind of find mistakes in them as well. So I'm going to go back. HeritageQuest has one of the largest collections of online books. And so you can search for individual people in books, histories, and things like that. If you go to publications, you can search for a title, a year, subject, or location, which those are typically the easier ways to search for a book in particular. If I recall correctly, they have over 200,000 books in their database. So, and they are for various countries as well. Just scrolling through, you can see that they have census record books for other states. They have lineages for different locations, church records, bibliographies. I know they have autobiographies. See, a book and letter form prepared and written of the Watson genealogy. So they have lots of family history books. And as I scroll down, they just kind of keep appearing. There's Montana, brief history of Indiana. So they have state histories, they have county histories, tons of family histories once again. So you can type in what you're looking for instead of having to just scroll through these. But if you're ever really bored, you can also do that as well. Now we're going to go to wills and probates. This is actually a large selection that was added within the last year. They have these for almost every state, and they're constantly updating. And so for this, I'm actually going to go, they have them alphabetical. I'm going to scroll down to North Carolina. Let's see. So this is North Carolina, wills and probates. And so again, you can choose where to look, but I'm going to type in who I would like to look for. So let's see. And let's see the date. Got to remember, I believe this one was in Sampson County. There we go. So this would be my 6th great-grandfather, I believe. And right here, you can tell that there are several records, at least 4 of them. And you can see his name is spelled a little bit different. Here it's some of them it does show it as Nathaniel, but a different spelling, Nathiel, kind of Nothiel. But the dates, it's the 18th of August, 1819. So that's actually just this week, or yeah, just this week, 201 years ago, Sampson County, and you can see that there's images. So it will tell you if there's images or just a transcription. And if you hover over it, you will see that it has that. And I do know from looking that this is just a copy, but this is the original. And so I want to see the original record. So it's giving me the information, the item description, original wills, and it's done by the name, so it's alphabetical. So you can see this is kind of like a piece of paper folded. And actually, Unity was his daughter. I forgot that this is actually his folder. I'm not sure why when you open it, it starts with the end of his. But this is his original last will and testament from 1819. So this is something that I've been able to use to track down his children and know who they were. And there's his name right there. And then it also has the probate information. There's David Merritt, who is his brother. So if I go back to this first one here, which is much more legible, this is the copy that was written kind of in the book of the probate court. You can see that it is much more legible and in a very different handwriting. So here, they don't exactly put up the different paragraphs for each child. They write everything together. But you have to know, again, a name, at least a date, and what location you're looking for. Otherwise, I would probably not have been able to find this at all. So I did know where he was, when he died. We didn't know exactly when he died, but we knew when his will was written and when it was probated. So therefore, it was between those two dates. And then we also have the will of his son. So if I want to edit the search, I can do that as well. And his is actually, let's see. So right here we have Gabriel Merritt, and you see there are several of these. So the original is the first one. And I love this handwriting. This is one of those books that has absolutely beautiful handwriting. So the will was written in 1818, but it was probated in 1820. So he died actually very close to when his father passed away. And you can tell right here, there's his name, but his mark was written. So therefore we know that he could not actually write his name. So this was written by someone else. This is actually the court probate book at that time. So that's an example of how to find last will and testaments. So we're going to go back one more time. City directories. Hopefully everyone knows what the city directories are. They kind of are the predecessor to the phone book. The purpose of city directories were to give information on occupations to begin with. So that way individuals would know who were construction workers, painters, who fixed different things. And then later it would just give a list of people alphabetically and what their occupation was. So they are quite useful as well, and they start at different times for different locations, of course. Larger cities go back much further, but even smaller cities, they'll have historical information in them. Right here, this is military records. So here you have Revolutionary War pension, bounty land warrant application files, Confederate prisoners of war. Notice that's not a pension application. And then you have several other specific wars. So this is different than Ancestry in the sense it is not giving you a full range of all types of military records. These are only specific to certain types of wars. So unless your ancestors were specifically in those, you might not be able to find anything. And the same goes for immigration. So you see they have Belgium, New Jersey, Ohio, and then the list goes down for a few other countries and states. I was hoping to have either a country or a state because I have several ancestors who are immigrants within the last century, but unfortunately they have not added those collections yet. Public records, these are going to be things that are like the phone books. So public records are one of the few records you might be able to find on people who are still living. I've had some patrons come to me and ask how they found a record on Ancestry where it had a previous address and phone number for them, and you know how other people could see that. Well, it was put in a phone book, so therefore that is a public record, so anyone is allowed to see that. So it gave no other personal information, and it would list that it was from past, not present. Social Security Death Index. Notice that said 94 million. So this is one of those that I'm going to type in. This is my father, and if you'll notice, I have Jerry S. You've probably heard in past presentations that my father changed his full name. His original name was Gerald Stewart Litch, and he changed it later to Jerry Stewart Light. See if I can spell. There we go. So I am putting in the name that he kind of went by later in life. I'm not even putting his specific birth date. I'm just putting in birth year and death year and where he lived. I don't know his social security number or when it was issued. And right here, you'll notice the very first one is his record. And so here it actually says Gerald S. Light. So that is his original first name. That's his birthday. It has issue year 1957-58 in Michigan, and that is his death date. And if you notice, you can see his social security number, but obviously I'm not alarmed in any way. Because of the social security numbers being so many digits in a certain combination, when anyone passes away, that number is basically redlined or stricken. So no social security number has been reused. So if someone tries to reuse that or take it, there's a big red flag that will go up. But think of how much information you can get from those, especially if you only know that one person. You can also find Social Security claims applications that can sometimes list the parents' names. So now I'm going to go to Revolutionary War pensions, and yes, this was in the military records, but this is more specific to their pension applications. And this one can be a bit tricky. You can search for the person in general, or you can search by the surname letters. And the reason I say it can be tricky are a lot of these are pension applications, meaning that they could be a widow's pension. So the wife is the one who actually applied for it, not the husband. And so it depends how it was filed and how it was indexed according to HeritageQuest. So I am actually going to browse the collection, and I'm going to look for E, and I'm going to look at the very last one right here because I'm looking for an Everett, which if I go down, see, I might not have gone, yes, right here, there we go. And you can see that this is something that at times that is 663 slides. So it does take a little bit of jumping around. You have to kind of get past the first pages. But these are alphabetical. So they start right there, and then you have to jump around. And this is part of research. This is how you find these records. I hope you're happy I've done my research ahead of time. So here is John Everett, and notice it has Sarah also. But if you see over here, this collection is not actually indexed. If I click right there, there are no names. If I go to the next slides, see, even though there's information here, none of this is indexed. So even if I had typed in the names I was looking for, I would not have really gotten a result. So this is a John Everett who was a Revolutionary soldier, and his wife, Sarah Fagan. So right here you see Bulloch County. When Sarah filed this widow's application, she was actually 104 when she did this. And this is, I think, it was over 15 pages. She gave a very, very detailed description of everything. But they rejected her application because she could not recall the date that he went in and whether or not it was 6 consecutive months each time, or, you know, the exact dates, which at 104, can you really blame her? But you can look down here at the bottom. These are all of his records. So here's a typed letter, you know, saying that his application was rejected. So here's Sarah Everett, and they scan the back of the pages, the front, and everything like that, so you know what numbers. Remember, you do have to know how to read cursive, and not all cursive is the same. Some of it can be quite difficult to read. So this actually goes all the way to slide 444. So this is 24 pages worth. So all of this is his pension application. And you can see where it has seals on it and different letters where, letters where others have applied and tried to do things after her. But they have lots of revolutionary military applications. And then you have down here the serial set. So these are different relief actions, things like that. And every one of these will show you and give you information on what they are. You have the Freedmen's Bank, which this was set up shortly after emancipation during Reconstruction era. You can browse the collection, and you can see over here, not every location had a bank. I'm just going to pick Savannah real quick. Let's see. Let's jump to a slide that has a good bit written. These can actually provide quite a bit of information. So it would have the date, where they were born, where their residence is, how old they were, what their occupation is, if they were married, had children, their father's name, mother, brothers and sisters, which that is quite important also. And then where it has remarks, they could put information on perhaps who they were looking for as far as family goes. Let me find one that might have even more information. There you go. Let's see. Well, I thought they would. Here you go. So here's some different remarks. So father, it's got died 4 years ago, where the mother was. It's got the names of siblings right there, and it'll show you, his mark. Some of these I have even seen where perhaps a father created the account on behalf of a child who was only 2 years old. So like right here, you see this person is only 11 years old. So it has mother and father and looks like a brother, but obviously there are no children, no wife. Here's someone where they actually don't have any information up here, how old they are, anything like that. But this is one of those ways that even if they didn't necessarily have money, they could put things in here to advertise who they were looking for. So it is a wonderful resource for African Americans who are looking for their ancestors and possibly family they might have had. That almost covers everything here. The cemeteries, next week's presentation is going to be over find graves, so we're going to go over that next week. I'm going to go back to the home page. I'm going to look at mortality schedules real quick. Mortality schedules were only available for so many years, but these were different questions that were often asked. Not every one of them had these questions. So the deceased name, sex, age, color, whether widowed, place of birth, month in which the death occurred, profession or occupation, disease or cause of death, number of days ill, parents' birthplace, and that was added in 1870, place where disease was contracted or how long the disease was a resident of the area, and that was in 1880. Keep in mind that not all of these questions were answered or added for each one. I know several of these that typically would not be. So once again, I'm going to choose a year, and these mortality schedules were done 1850, 60, 70, 80, and 1885, but not for every state. So that's why I like to pick a year in particular, because then it will show me what states were recorded and what counties. So I'm going to go to 1870. So it wasn't every state. I'm going to go back up to Georgia and then down to Mitchell County, which I passed already. So you see there's only 3 pages down here. Whoops. These are always kind of interesting to go through just to kind of see the causes of death at this time. Because if you think about it, they did not have much medical knowledge, especially in the South. So you had hospitals, but not large hospitals. So most conditions were either left untreated or treated with kind of primitive medicine. And child mortality was very common. And also for women, childbirth or things like that were very common cause of death. So you do see quite a few children who died young. And some of the most common causes of death for children are burned. And sadly, that was the case because this time they cooked with fire in the kitchen everywhere. It didn't matter who, but the children, they just wore typically what would look like a gown, and so they could catch on fire easily. And also different types of worms and things like that. And of course, pneumonia. So right in here, it will have the names, again, their age, sex, race, if they were widowed, and this is their place of birth. And if you notice right here, they don't answer all the questions or even ask, but the month that the person died, their profession, which they don't put for everyone, and their disease, the cause of death. And so I was looking through these, just kind of trying to see if there was anyone in here that I might recognize. And going down here, I found Gibson West. And this is my 4th great-grandfather. He was 72, widowed, born in North Carolina. He died in December, right before 1870. So he died in 69. And it says he was a retired farmer. And he died from, if I can say it right, neuralgia. So that's not something that you would normally find, is 1870, when someone died specifically and their cause of death. They quit doing the mortality schedules in 1885, sadly. And so then you have a very large gap, especially since there isn't the 1890 census. You have that large gap between 1885 and when different states started recording death certificates that you don't know when someone died or how. And you can look at the different causes of death over here. See right there, worms, 3-year-old. Burnt, it's a 2-year-old. Pneumonia, dropsy. Dropsy was very common. Consumption, which that was actually tuberculosis. Many people aren't familiar with that. Congestion of the lung. So you can see all of these causes of death. Teething, that is quite sad. But this is basically a mortality schedule, which can give you a great deal of information. And then agricultural, industrial census records, again, they're the non-population ones. I'm just gonna kind of pick right here. So this can give you different information as well. It'll give you names and tell you either for agricultural, how much land they owned, how much might have been farmed and worked, how much was invested in it and money that they owned for this industrial. If you notice, it's telling you how much annually they have, and then it's giving different amounts here. So that's a great deal of information as well. And the fact that you can find that for all different areas. You see they even have Canada census records over here. And if you have family in different locations, you scroll down here, they even have records for South America, Caribbean, UK, Irish, Canadian, Indian, Central America, European, Russian, African, Asia, and the Pacific Rim. Excuse me. I will warn you that a lot of these records they do have, but they are in the native language. My grandmother was actually from Russia, along with her parents, and I was kind of hoping maybe I could find something, some form of record before they came to America, but hopefully translated. That is not the case, so therefore their records in Russia are in Russian, which I don't know about many of you, but I do not read. So it tells you right here, these records are in Russian. So you should search using Russian words and location spellings. Again, I sadly do not read or write or speak Russian. So even though I would love to try to find something pertaining to my family, there I'm unable to. As far as UK and Irish, again, they have various collections available, so you can look through those collections specifically, which are still quite a few because the date ranges go quite far. I know in European they have quite a few German records, but several of those German, Swiss records, those are in German, Austrian, and things like that. So a lot of these are in the native language. So, which a lot of us, again, do have German ancestors, whether it's the Salzburgers, or if you have French ancestry in the Huguenots. But as you see up here, you kind of have to know the language in order to search these records. But if you were to have ancestry, you know that you have to pay an extra subscription just to have access to these. So here, all of these are free, and you might be able to have someone assist you in searching for those. And you can even look up more US records, and it will just tell you additional record collections that are available. See, some of these are funeral, church, marriage, christening records. So those are quite a few records. Several different states. So this is HeritageQuest, and once again, as long as you're able to access Galileo, you can search this at home, you can download these records, you can print them out, or even save them to your computer to, if you have a computer program like Roots Magic or something like that, Family Tree Maker, you can add these records to your family tree. And it's wonderful to work through and try to search through the original records to find. And it really helps you practice knowing the information on your ancestor instead of simply typing in a name in Ancestry and letting the computer do the work for you. You really do need to try to know that information first before you go to the computer just searching. So that way, if you do go to archives, if you go to libraries, historical societies, where often they might not let you bring certain materials in, whether it's a laptop or a phone, you will know the information, you can have it written down, and you'll know what to search for, what year and location. So I highly recommend to play with HeritageQuest. see what you might be able to find that perhaps isn't on Ancestry, isn't on Family Search or MyHeritage. You might find surprising things. I've actually found a good bit on my family using it. Well, we'll be doing the Q&A on Monday, and remember next week be going over Find a Grave. So I look forward to talking with you next week. Have a good day.